Let's do that hockey.
Hey everybody, welcome and thanks for listening to the Dobber Prospects podcast, episode 111. I'm your host, Peter Harling, and if this is your first time listening to this podcast, welcome to the show. Thanks for listening. If you've been a long-time listener, or if it's your first time and you enjoy the show, go ahead and give me a follow on Twitter. The show podcast Twitter account is at DPR_show, Dobber Prospects Radio. My Twitter handle is Farling, P-H-A-R-L-I-G. Go ahead and give me a follow. Subscribe to the podcast. Give me a 5-star like, all those good things. So today's episode, we've been doing the top 10 prospect rankings for each NHL team. It's an article series that I've been writing for NHL Rumors. Hope you've been reading them and following them. I tweet them out. I include them in the show notes. And I've had guests on for each episode, but today is going to be a solo episode. I have a new computer, and I'm just kind of figuring some things out with how to make the podcast going from a Mac computer to a Windows computer. So new software and all those things. So I didn't want to experiment with a guest, so I'll do this one alone. So this episode will be the Colorado Avalanche top 10 prospects. And now that there's a couple of games in each league under our belts for this season, and I've been to a few games, I thought I'd talk about some fantasy hockey relevant prospects that are off to hot starts and that have low Fantrax ownership. So this will be for owners that are in the deep leagues. That's kind of the niche of this show, being a Dobber Network podcast. It obviously has fantasy hockey slant to it. So there's fantasy hockey talk, and being the prospects side, it's talking about players who aren't in the NHL yet that you'll have to roster for a while, and they'll pay dividends for you down the road. So starting with the Colorado Avalanche, top 10 prospects. Again, this article can be found on NHL Rumors, not Dobber Hockey, surprisingly. So no guest for this, but I've been starting each top 10 rankings off to doing a quick little organizational overview. And the Avalanche are obviously a Stanley Cup contending team. They've got a dynamite roster with a fantastic core. Nathan MacKinnon is the cornerstone of that team. He's their number one center. He's a franchise superstar player, joined by Cale Makar. He's a stud on the blue line. You've got the Mikko Rantanen, their power forward winger, Captain Gabriel Landeskog, all homegrown talent. They're surrounding them with some up-and-coming big guns too. Bowen Byram and Alex Newhook are either on the team or on the brink of making the team as I record this episode. They've had some misses in their drafting and development history. They've had Connor Bleakley, Joey Hishon, both first-round picks that failed to live up to their first-round status. Tyson Jost is on the roster. He's been in NHL for a few seasons, but he's 10th overall selection. I don't think he's quite living up to my expectations anyways for what I was thinking he was going to turn into at the NHL. So he's not a bust, but I would argue that he's a bit of a miss. I know teams have a perfect track record, and like I said, the Avalanche have done a very good job of drafting and developing some superstar talent. They were pretty bad for a while, so they've had the advantage of having some high draft picks to help make that easier. But they've also shown patience with the development of their prospects and shown good asset management overall. So their top-ranked prospect is Bowen Byram, and it was a pretty easy choice. I did give some serious consideration to Alex Newhook, but Bowen Byram is their top prospect right now. He's actually made the team to start the season. He's played in 8 games. He's got a goal and 4 assists for 5 points. He's their 2019 first-round pick, selected 4th overall. So not too surprising that he's doing very well. A little bit surprising, though, because the Avalanche have a pretty pretty solid defensive core. And it's questionable whether or not, for me anyways, if he was going to be able to crack the roster coming into the season. So his development curve last year, he's in the COVID short season. He didn't play until the World Juniors, where he starred with Team Canada. He was named captain of that roster, and they only lost one game the entire tournament. Sadly, it was for Canada, it was the gold medal game, which landed them the silver medal. So that's still pretty impressive. Following the World Juniors, the WHL resumed, but despite the fact that he was still WHL eligible, he ended up playing in 19 games in the NHL last year, maintaining his eligibility for the Calder Trophy as the league's top rookie, and his eligibility for me ranking him in their top 10. Certainly should be a Calder candidate going into this season, and it's difficult for defense to win it because it's really points driven, and with Cale Makar getting the lion's share of the offensive minutes in Colorado on the back end, he'll be in tough, I think, to win it. If he were on a different team, I think his chances would be slightly better if they were still a good team but maybe lacked the stud on the blue line. So he'll have to share that with Makar, but it's still within his grasp, I think, to do it. He plays a little bit more of a robust style than Makar, which may have cost him some games earlier in his career. His last season, as he ended the year with an injury. But, I mean, if you look at the two of those studs that Colorado is boasting on the blue line, that looks real nice for them going down the future. The only other team that can really rival that 1-2 punch in top young prospects is Buffalo with Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power. And you could really make an argument which one's better for either side there, which pair you like better, the Buffalo side or the Colorado side. So Bowen Byram barely makes it onto this list, but because he does, he's number one. Coming in at number 2 on the list is Alex Newhook, Colorado Avalanche, 2019 first-round pick, 16th overall selection. He is a 20-year-old, little undersized at 5'10", 190. And since his draft year, being drafted out of the BCHL, he went to the NCAA route, played with Boston College. In his freshman season, he had 42 points in 34 games with 19 goals. That's not too shabby. And then last year, his freshman season in the COVID-shortened season, only played 12 games, but 7 goals, 16 points, so well over a point a game. And then he also finished that season and signed his pro contract. Played a handful of games in both the AHL and the NHL. So he had 9 points in 8 AHL games with the Colorado Eagles, and played 6 regular season games with the Avalanche, where he had 3 points. So over a point a game in the AHL and half a point a game in 6 games in the NHL. But he also played in 8 playoff games that year with the Avalanche and had 2 points in 8 playoff games. So when college players graduate or sign their contracts and leave college early and go to the pro level, they usually play a handful of games at the end of the season like this. And it's pretty easy to get overexcited about these players when they have a really good showing in just a small sample size in the American Hockey League. I think of Taro Hirose as a good example for that. A recent college graduate, signed with Detroit, I don't remember what his stats were. We had like 9 points in 6 games or something to that effect. And hopes and expectations were really high, but the quality of play at competition that he played in and the role he had at the end of the season really helped facilitate that production. And he hasn't really been able to duplicate that with any sort of consistency, certainly not at the NHL level, and not even so much at the AHL level. But what's impressive about Newhook, and why I bring that up, is he played 8 playoff games, so it's not like he was thrown onto a roster in meaningless games at the end of a season. He was played in 8 playoff games, which, all the marbles kind of thing. He also wore the Team Canada jersey for the World Juniors last season. 6 points in 6 games, so again, point-a-game player. And this season he has 1 game in the NHL, no points, and he has since played in the American Hockey League. Through 6 games there, he's got a pair of goals and a pair of assists for 4 points. So Newhook is a player I'm obviously quite keen on. I really like his fantasy value as well. He's a player I think might not spend too much time in the American Hockey League this season, and depending on how long he's down there, it could either this season or next season be a contender for the Calder Trophy. Maybe a sleeper one, but a contender nonetheless. My third-ranked prospect for the Colorado Avalanche, this is where it really starts to drop off. Last season I had him way up high. Definitely a fantasy relevant prospect, and since then he's been kind of trending in the wrong direction. That's goaltender Justus Annunen. He's a 2018 third round pick, 64th overall, so some decent draft pedigree there. He's 21 years old, 6'4", and the reason why I'm so high on him is his stats coming over from the Liga were fantastic. In 1920, he had a 15-5-3 record with a 1.77 goals against average and 6 shutouts. He played for Finland at the World Juniors, and he looked really great there too on a disappointing team, albeit, but he looked good there. So after that season, he played one more, in Liga. Not quite as good, 7-9-7 record on loan back to Karpat with a 2.43 goals against average. He finished that season over in North America with the Colorado Eagles of the AHL, played in 2 games, lost 1, tied 1, 293 goals against average. Not great, not bad. Played in 1 playoff game, and lost that as well. The 21-22 season that we're in now, the needle continues to move in the wrong direction. He's a 1-3-2 record with a 3.7 goals against average and an .858 save percentage. So I like the pedigree of this player. He's shown really well at younger age, playing in junior, in the Liga, in a pro men's league, at the World Juniors. He's just kind of maybe having a struggling adjustment to the North American game, perhaps the smaller rinks. I'm not sure what it is. But in order for him to maintain his status as the third-ranked prospect in the Avalanche system, or justify having it at this time even, he really needs to figure some things out real quick and get his game turning back in the right direction. The fourth-ranked prospect I have is defenseman Justin Barron. He was drafted in 2020, a first-round selection, 25th overall by the Colorado Avalanche. So kind of an embarrassment of riches on the blue line. They've got Makar, Byram. Don't forget about Samuel Girard. And now you've got 20-year-old on the horizon here too, and Barron. So what I like about him with this team is he's got a nice blend of size and mobility and skill. He's 6'2", 195, so he's not huge. He's not a big physical presence, but he definitely does have an element of physicality to his game should he want to use it. Even at the NHL level, he's got some strength and he protects the puck really nicely. He's got some leadership as well. His final year of junior, captain of the Halifax Mooseheads, and he produced nearly a point per game offensive pace there with 31 points in 33 games. He cracked the World Junior roster and finished the year in the American Hockey League, playing top pairing minutes, scoring 4 goals in 7 games there. Right now he's in his first full pro season, and he's in the American Hockey League, and at the time of recording this, through 6 games, he's got a goal and 2 points for 3 points, so half a point per game. He is more than likely going to spend the entire season in the American Hockey League, given the depth that the Avalanche have on the blue line, So he'll get lots of reps and good minutes playing with the Colorado Eagles. They'll take their time with his development there. So the 5th ranked prospect I have is Martin Kaut, 22-year-old right winger. He's 6'2", 190. He's another first-round draft pick by the Colorado Avalanche. They selected him 16th overall in 2019. He already has 3 seasons of development in the American Hockey League with the Colorado Eagles. And his point production and play continue slowly but surely to improve and get a little bit better all the time, which is one of the key things you want to look for in prospect development, that they don't stagnate at any level, and they just continue to progress and play their way towards an NHL job. He's been rewarded with 14 NHL games to his credit so far. And last year, to start the season during the COVID nonsense, he was loaned overseas and ended up playing with 4 different teams last season. He played on loan to Modo. He played in the Czech League. And then when he came back to North America, once things got going over here, he managed to play in 5 NHL games and 20 AHL games, and he had 16 points in 20 games in the American Hockey League with the Eagles, but was held pointless in his 5 NHL games. He's got another 5 games under his belt to start this 21-22 season as well, but still no points, and then 2 games in the American Hockey League where he has 2 points. So he's currently, right now, I believe he's with the Avalanche. We'll see how long he stays there if he's not scoring. Injuries will play a big part of that as well. All right, moving along to number 6. Here I'm going left wing, right wing, Oskar Olausson. He is the 2021 first round pick by the Avalanche. They selected him with the 28th overall pick. And the 6'2", 181 Swedish winger was also selected in the CHL import draft by the Barrie Colts in the second round, 118th overall. This season is his first year in North America with the Colts, and I managed to catch him on TV so far, but not live, and he was very impressive. He's 6'2", 181, so he's got good size for the OHL level. And he moves real well, and he's got a real nose for the net. Nice shot. He's got 12 points through 10 games, 7 goals, and 5 assists. He's a strong skater that creates offense through transition. He's speedy. He's a burner. He uses his speed to his advantage to create offense. His two-way play is also a strength to his game, and he competes hard on both sides of the puck. His offensive upside at the NHL level might not translate to, top first line player, maybe top 6. But because he's so versatile, and the coach can put him in a variety of situations, I'm not sure how high his ceiling is, but I certainly like his opportunity to play in the NHL at some point in his career. All right, so next on my list, coming in at number 7, I'm going with big Finnish winger Sampo Ranta. He is another left wing, right wing, 6'2", 194, and he's well acclimated to North America already. He played 2 seasons in the USHL with Sioux City Musketeers, 3 seasons in the NCAA with University of Minnesota. And in his career in the NCAA, his point totals continued to improve season after season, from 16 points to 20 points to 31 and 31 in his final season in 2021. Following that year, he turned pro, signed his pro contract, finished the season in the American Hockey League, playing 14 games with the Colorado Eagles, having 7 points there, so his offense transitioned to pro level immediately, and he played 2 playoff games for both the Colorado Eagles and the Avalanche even, scoring 2 points in the AHL playoffs no points with the Avs and the big roster. So that was last season. This year, going into this season, I would have anticipated that he would have a full season of development playing in the American Hockey League, getting lots of minutes, but he's actually made the roster to start the season. He's got 8 games so far played. Still hasn't scored a point yet. So it remains to be seen how long he stays there. But this is a player who's trending up fast and hard in fantasy hockey. He was in college last year, and now he's in the NHL. Rather not that's to stay for the season, there definitely remains to be seen. But even if it's not, if he goes back to the NHL, it won't be for long, and he'll be back in the NHL playing a style similar to Mikko Rantanen if the Avalanche have any say in the situation. Next up, 8th overall, another forward. This is going to be Jean-Luc Foudy. He is Colorado 2020 third-round draft choice, selected 75th overall. Not quite as big. He's 5'11", 176, so he's on the smaller size. He's 19 years old, and he is a speed demon. He is a burner. He is one of the fastest skaters you are going to see. He is quick and fast, and there's a distinction between those two, and he can carry the puck and make plays at speed as well, which is super important. Being fast in the first one of the pucks doesn't really mean anything if you can't do anything once you get the puck, or if you can skate really fast but not handle the puck or read and react while you're carrying it or take passes while you're in top flight. Foudy can do those things. He has got a certain skill level as well that is very impressive. So with no OHL season last year for Foudy to play for with the Windsor Spitfires, he was a bit of a refugee. So he ended up playing in overseas in Sweden in some league called Hockey at 10. Played 10 games there. Then he came back to North America once the American Hockey League got going. Played 34 games for the Colorado Eagles. Scored 14 points and saw 2 playoff games. Now, he's eligible to play in the Ontario Hockey League again, but because of the COVID situation, players that played more than 20 or 25 games, whatever it is, in the American Hockey League last year are eligible to return back to the American Hockey League, where they typically wouldn't be. It's you play your junior career out and then you can graduate to the American Hockey League, or you can leave early to play in the NHL. So Foudy's not really NHL ready yet, but the Avalanche have decided not to return him to the OHL so far. And he's playing in the American Hockey League and struggling a little. 7 games, no points. He's a -9. So not really sure what they're doing with him there. It looks like I haven't watched a game, so I can't say how he's played there, but just looking at his stat line, this strikes me as a player that might be benefiting going back to play a final season in the in the Ontario Hockey League. He's still only 19 years old, so there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It is a great developmental league. It'll allow him to play top minutes, score lots of goals, get his confidence up, play for Canada at the World Juniors perhaps, and then come back to the American Hockey League the following season. 9. The 9th ranked Colorado Avalanche prospect I have is Shane Bowers. So Bowers was drafted by the Ottawa Senators in 2017, first round, 28th overall, and acquired by the Colorado Avalanche in the trade that sent Matt Duchene to Ottawa. So Bowers is now 22 years old. He's 6'2", 185, and his development curve has been a bit of a roller coaster. His freshman season, he spent 2 years in the NCAA with the Boston Terriers, and as a freshman or rookie, he had 40 games, 32 points, 17 goals. That's pretty good. Followed that up with 37 games the following season, but dipped to 11 goals and only 21 points. Despite the fact that his production dipped, He signed his pro contract after that season, played 4 games with the Colorado Eagles in the American Hockey League, didn't have any points, 4 more playoff games, and had an assist. He also suited up for Team Canada that season, playing 5 games at the World Juniors and had 2 points. So his first full season in the American Hockey League, and this is pre-pandemic, he produced 27 points in 48 games as a rookie in the American Hockey League. So that's a tougher league. So that's actually, I think, moving the needle back up in the right direction. And then in the the pandemic shortened season last year, he played 28 games and had 7 goals and only 2 assists for 9 points. So kind of struggled a little bit. We'll kind of maybe give him the benefit of the doubt on this one, being it strange circumstances, playing in empty arenas and only against your division rivals and COVID and all that stuff. So who knows? A little bit of an inconsistent offensive trend here has started to develop, which little concerning. And he started the season off injured, so he hasn't really played yet. He's got 1 game under his belt so far. But he's a player that should play the entire season in the American Hockey League. And this will be his second full season in, well, technically his third, if you can count last season as a full season. I have a hard time doing that because it's only 28 games and whatnot, but he is 22, so the clock's ticking on him. He needs to have a really nice season to either stay on the list or graduate onto the NHL roster, or he's going to find himself on the outside looking in. Coming in at number 10, we're going to the blue line again, another defenseman. This time it's going to be Drew Helleson, another college defenseman out of Boston, this time with the Boston College Eagles. He's 20 years old now. He is a 2019 Colorado Avalanche second round pick, selected 47th overall. And he's 20, I mentioned that. He's got decent size, 6'3", 190. So the scouting report on him in his draft year read something along the lines of that he's big, mobile, defensive defenseman. And that is not incorrect. He is big, he is mobile, and he's very good in his own end. He breaks up plays quite nicely. But then, after his draft year, he found an offensive level to his game as a freshman with the Eagles. So, in his rookie season in the NCAA, he only managed 6 points, 1 goal, 5 assists through 28 games. In his freshman season, however, he was named to the American World Junior roster, where you would assume that he was added to be their defensive shutdown defenseman, and I'm sure that was the thinking, but he managed 4 points, 2 goals, and 2 assists through 7 games, went back to Boston College, and continued his offensive tear to the tune of 15 points through 22 games overall that season, 4 goals and 11 assists. That's pretty impressive. And this season, he is back for a third year, his junior season at Boston College, and he's got 1 goal and 7 points through 8 games. So keep in mind that he's a defensive defenseman who's scoring at a point-a-game pace. He's got good size, he's got good mobility, and it's just an embarrassment of riches on the Colorado Avalanche blue line and their prospect pipeline. All right, so that wraps up my Avalanche top 10 rankings. Again, you can catch this article. I'll link it in the show notes, but it's originally posted on NHL Rumors, and I'll be doing all 32 teams. I have posted the Columbus Blue Jackets roster, or top 10 prospects already, and this week saw the Dallas Stars go up, so you can catch those. I'll be doing those podcasts shortly in the next week or two, and hopefully I'll be able to figure out my technological hiccups here and have a guest back on, and it really adds a lot more than just listening to me yammer on. But to recap my Colorado Avalanche top 10, first overall, Bowen Byram, defenseman. Second overall forward, Alex Newhook. Third ranked, holding on to his rankings, goaltender Justus Annunen. At fourth overall, we go Justin Barron. Fifth coming in is Martin Kaut. Sixth overall, I really like Oskar Olausson. He's playing in the OHL with the Barrie Colts. Number 7, Sampo Ranta sneaks into the NHL right out of the NCAA. Nice. Number 8, Jean-Luc Foudy, holding on to an AHL job, but probably should be back in the O. Number 9, we've got Shane Bowers. What have you done for me lately? And then number 10, Drew Helleson. This is a prospect on the rise. He'll be a little bit higher in my list next year, if not way higher. So that's my top 10 rankings for the Colorado Avalanche. Now let's talk about some other fantasy relevant prospects who are capturing my attention early in the season. So I've been able to go to a couple of games. So a lot of the players that I'll talk about are coming out of the American Hockey League or the OHL, just because I've been paying more attention to those leagues because they're a little bit close to home. So I didn't see Scott Perunovich play. He's Springfield with St. Louis Blues prospect. So the Blues drafted him out of, he's played in the NCAA. He was a Hobey Baker Award winner, and I was thinking that after he finished his college career that he could go straight to the NHL. He's that good. He's a good offensive transitional defenseman. He's only 25% Fantrax owned, and last season was his first season as a pro, and he missed it entirely, not because of COVID, but because he had an injury. So he didn't play at all last year, which can be devastating and can take young players in their 20-something a little bit of time to get their feet back under their belt. Not the case here. He hit the ground running as a AHL rookie. He's got 10 points through 6 games, 2 goals, 8 assists as a rookie defenseman in the American Hockey League. He's going to be in the NHL in no time, and he's going to be great when he gets there. I think the St. Louis Blues have themselves a blue chip prospect here. And the fact that he's only 25% Fantrax owned tells me that he's got some good availability in some of your leagues. So he's a player that you might have to stash him for the better part of this season. He might not contribute to a championship for you this year, but he's coming, and he's going to be a good one. Next is a player I have seen live this season. Happy to say. Buffalo Sabres prospect Jack Quinn played with the Rochester Americans just down the street from me against the Belleville Senators. He is 29% Fantrax owned, so a little bit higher, but still available in 2/3 of all leagues. And last season, he was drafted in the first round by Buffalo out of the Ottawa 67s, ahead of Jack Quinn, to the surprise of many. And I kind of beat up on him a little bit on my Buffalo Sabres top 10 prospect rankings with Joe Yerdon, where he was a second-ranked prospect on the Sabres, but I basically said they should have drafted Marco Rossi or a couple other players ahead of him. That might have been incorrect. He's got 10 points through 6 games this season. 5 goals and 5 assists. And last year, because there was no OHL for him to go back to, they went ahead and played him in the World Juniors. He played 7 games and had 5 goals, and then finished the year in the American Hockey League, 15 games, 2 goals and 7 assists for 9 points. So that's pretty good for an 18-year-old in the American Hockey League. And even better what he's doing this year with over a point, almost 2 points a game, 5 goals and 5 assists in 6 games. Now, the game that I saw him play, he had great deployment. He played in a top 6 role on the wing, and the Rochester lost the game to Belleville. Belleville, I think it was 7-4 or something like that was the final score, or 7-3. So it was not a blowout, but it wasn't a really close game. And Rochester had an extended power play with over a minute of a 2-man advantage and weren't able to score on it. And the power play pretty much kind of ran through Jack Quinn on the half wall. They kept trying to give the puck to him every chance they get. He's got a good shot, and he distributes the puck and sees the ice really well, and he's got really good hands. You just can't seem to give this kid a pass that he can't handle, or you can't give him a bad pass. He just takes them all and makes it look good. But he really struggled the game that I watched him play. So that just must be a one-off. The stats say so. He might have got a secondary assist or something, but certainly wasn't able to to contribute and cash the chances that he was getting. And by the third period, he was showing signs of visible frustration, slamming his stick and whatnot. There was one really funny play where he was back checking hard on a Ottawa rush up the ice, and you'll notice that sometimes a player who's behind a teammate will give him a little push on the bum with his stick to kind of give him a boost. Well, Jack Quinn got one of those boosts from his teammate, and I don't think he was ready for it because he basically made him fall down, and it turned a 3-on-2 to a 3-on-1, and Belleville scored, and that's when it looked like Jack Quinn was really at his wit's end in that night, and that was late in the third. Another player I want to talk about is Columbus Blue Jackets prospect Tyler Angle. He's playing with Cleveland. Doesn't have the same kind of draft pedigree that Quinn has. He's a much later draft pick and had a good OHL career, but not a star, not a World Junior household name. And he's only 3% Fantrax owned. So he played out his 4 years of junior hockey, and then last year was his first year as a pro in the American Hockey League, and he tore it up. As you see junior players through the OHL and WHL and whatnot, their first year they score a little bit, and then their draft year is their second year, and then they progress as they go along to the point where they're a point a game or 100-point player in their fourth year, and then they go to the next level and play in the American Hockey League and score 20 points in 60 games or whatever the case may be. Last year, his rookie year in the American Hockey League, he played 23 games and had 24 points. So he maintained his point per game status as a rookie in the American Hockey League, and maintains his rookie eligibility as well this season. And he's got 8 points through 8 games. Hasn't scored a goal yet, but still a point a game player. And only 3% Fantrax owned. So Tyler Angle is a player I think is a lot of people are sleeping on, and is a player you might be able to get off your waiver wire. You'll have to stash him for a year, but I think he's a great free add to your prospect pool if he's available. Keep in mind, I don't think that he's got Jack Quinn and Scott Perunovich sort of upside. Not necessarily going to be a dominant offensive player in the NHL when he gets there, but I'm talking about a player you can get for free off the waiver wire that is a point-a-game player as a rookie in the American Hockey League and plays for Columbus. So there's a lot of opportunity for him to break that roster as they're looking at rebuilding. So you'll hear about him on my Columbus Blue Jackets top 10 prospect rankings coming out soon. The article's already out if you want to read it. Just go check it out on NHL Rumors. So there's 3 players from the AHL. And next up I want to talk about is a college player, NCAA, Carter Savoie. He is Edmonton Oilers prospect playing for the University of Denver, as his brother Savoie is playing for the Winnipeg Ice, and they're just being ridiculous. But back to Carter. He is 8% Fantrax owned, and he is scoring at 2 point per game pace in the NCAA in his second sophomore season. 6 games, 6 goals, 6 assists, 12 points. Last season as a freshman, he had 20 points through 24 games, 13 goals and 7 assists. Pretty impressive offensive numbers for a 19-year-old. I believe he's 19, maybe 20. So, he's a player to put on your watch list. 8% Fantrax owned, or just snag him up. Skipping over to another player that I saw live, this time in the OHL. Went to a couple of Frontenacs games now, and I saw them play the Peterborough Petes. And Tucker Robertson is a player who is making some noise. Through 9 games this season, he's got 16 points. And he was draft eligible last year and was not drafted in 2021. He did not play any games in 2021 in his draft year. So that might have something to do with why he wasn't drafted. He's also 5'10", 190, so not exactly a huge guy. But in 1920, in his rookie season in the OHL, he had 18 points through 55 games. So that's not too bad for a rookie. But he's certainly making some noise this season in his D+1 season, and he would be a really strong candidate to be a redraft player, an overage drafted player. So he's certainly someone who you might want to keep an eye on. His name again is Tucker Robertson, and he plays for the Peterborough Petes. Moving along to the WHL, my friend Joel Henderson, formerly of Dauber Prospects, when he was on, he talked to me about a prospect that he was really high on in his draft year in 2020, and that's Tristan Robins. And right now he is 5% Fantrax owned. He's a San Jose Sharks draftee. He's selected in the second round of the 20 draft, 56 overall, and he's in the dub playing for Saskatchewan, I believe it is. 10 games, 7 goals, 14 assists for 21 points, so over 2 points a game. Last time I checked, that was pretty good. Last season, in the short season, he had 23 points in 16 games, 10 goals. So he's a little undersized, but he's obviously a very gifted offensive dynamic forward. Right winger, someone who's at 5% Fantrax ownership. You'd have to wait on him for a year or two before he's competing for an NHL roster and a position on your fantasy team. But I think the upside with this player is pretty significant. Definitely a top 6 sort of candidate. Sticking in the WHL, I mentioned Matt Savoie. He's tearing it up with the Winnipeg Ice in the WHL. They have 7 of the top 10 league leading scorers. They are just dominating junior hockey, killing their opponents, scoring at will. Some players of note on that roster include Philadelphia Flyers prospect Connor McLennan and 2 top draft choices for the upcoming 22 draft in Matt Savoie and Connor Geekie. And Connor Geekie's making some noise here. He could be a top 5 pick. These are both going to be first round players. All right, one last player I want to talk about is back in the OHL, and that's Sasha Pastujov. He was just named the OHL Player of the Month for the first month of October. He's a right wing, left wing Anaheim Ducks prospect playing with the Guelph Storm. He is only 11% Fantrax owned, and through 10 games played, he's got 10 goals and 7 assists for 17 points. He's a goal a game player. He was drafted in the 2021 entry draft by the Ducks, third round, 66th overall. Last season, 21-22, he played for U.S. national team where he had 41 games, 65 points, and he also played in the U18 tournament where he played 5 games, had 5 goals, and 8 assists. So, goal-a-game player at 3 different levels. The U18, 5 goals in 5 games. With the U.S. national team in the USHL, he had 30 goals in 41 games. So a little bit less than a goal a game there. And he's 10 goals in 10 games in the Ontario Hockey League with Guelph. Again, only 11% Fantrax owned. So a lot of ownership opportunity for this prospect. He could play another year in the Ontario Hockey League and then a season or 2 in the American Hockey League before he's ready to go to the NHL. So it's the long game with Sasha Pastujov, but he's certainly got some holes and warts in his game that he's got to work out. But there's no reason to think that he can't do that, and his offense is undeniable. He could be a real fantasy contributor for you in the future. So that's it for this show. Thanks for listening. A couple of podcasts that I've been just gobbling up lately that I kind of wanted to share with you. I heard about a podcast called Showbound, and it's hosted by Barrie Colts active player Ethan Cardwell and Michael Raskin. They have a great show with good guests, and they talk a lot of junior hockey. More junior hockey for you to listen to. It's 30 plus seasons going now, so you've probably heard of the Junior Hockey Magazine. But it's hosted by TSN's Gino Retta, and it's a great show. Keeps you up to date with what's going on in the world of junior hockey. There's a lot of leagues out there to keep up with. So if you can't keep up with the OHL, the Q, and the Dub, and the CJHL, it's a great little short podcast every week with Gino Retta, and he's got good league insiders that tell you all the comings and goings of what's happened across the CHL and other leagues. And then another one that's a little bit more fantasy driven, my friends at the 5-Hole Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the FH show. They do a weekly show, very similar to the boys over at Keeping Karlsson, so a little bit more of the same. They also have a really good Discord as well. You should check that out. So just paying forward some podcast love. I'll share a couple more in another episode or two. There's some I'm listening to, but those are it for now. Again, if this is your first time listening to the show, thanks very much. And if you're a subscriber, thanks for subscribing, and thanks for listening, and keep on enjoying the show. If you have guests you want me to have on the show, shoot me a message on Twitter if you want to interact with me at DPR_show. Ask questions about your fantasy team, specific players. I'm happy to interact with the listeners and talk hockey when I can. And until then, thanks for listening, and keep your stick on the ice.